Good.
All right, John Judy.
This is my favorite.
Sing this song.
Yeah, sing with me. This is the last time, and then we get to go home, baby. And now you can go. Good.
All right, John Judy.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday, March 25th meeting of your Irving Las Colinas Rotary Club, celebrating our 84 years of service to this community. If you'll stand with me, our invocation today will be led by Reverend Shane Webb. Laura Manning's going to introduce us in the pledge. Neil and Sandra are going to lead us in singing Edelweiss, and Bobby Hosser is going to lead us in the introduction of our visiting Rotarians and guests. Okay, lead us as we pray.
Let us lift our hearts in prayer. Holy God, we thank you for this day, for the rain that you have given to us. Lord, this wonderful group of individuals coming together to serve others. God, we ask your blessing upon us, upon the work that we do. We ask our community. God, we pray for the migrant, the young folks that have crossed our border. God, we pray that you would help those who are suffering from the pandemic in various ways. God, as we see the light at the end of this tunnel, would you continue to provide us with hope? And we ask these things in your.
Thank you, Laura.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. You guys sound good. Y'all must have passed over the weekend. We're glad to see everybody with us today. I had to be back. I want to say thanks to Rick for pinch hitting for me when I was with my family last week, and I have a week off there. Introduce our visiting Rotarians and guests. Welcome, new member. Now, Kihu and another lady, Jasmine, contacted me by email over the last 2 weeks, found out about our club through our website and social media post. He was able to join us today. Jasmine, I think, is going to join us next week. And something I thought was interesting today, Jordan sent me a couple of messages this morning about people that are attending our meetings virtually. One of them is a Rotarian from Uganda that has found out about our club, likes our program and our format, and is watching our meetings each week on YouTube from Uganda. So just that's something that we wouldn't have even thought we could do a year ago. And so it's kind of neat that I've asked Jordan if we're going to have them helping out with our flag program, because we could use a few virtual flag handlers as well. So before I get on to our program, Bill Abar, come up and give us a quick update on our next flag work day, and on Dr. O, if you would, sir.
We've planned our next flag work day to be the Saturday after Easter, which is, I think, the 10th, April 10th, 9 o'clock. We'll work for an hour, and our goal will be to build 50 new flags, brand new flags. We had a nice turnout the last time, and we got a lot accomplished in it. It was, if we can do that, it should be a beautiful day, and it'll be April, March, and and we'll have a good time. So the 10th, 9 o'clock in the morning, we work 1 hour. Well, at 10 o'clock, we're done. Now, I saw Dr. Oberlin last Sunday. It was his 95th birthday. He came up, sang happy birthday to him, and laughed. And, you know, he had a stroke about 4 or 5 weeks ago. He's recovering from that. I could understand him better last Sunday than I could the week that, and much more than I could the week before that. And he was so cognizant that when I got ready to leave, why are you leaving? You just got here, kind of growled at me. So the one thing you can see, he's durable.
Yeah.
I mean, he's durable, but he's hanging in. So there you go.
Thank you, Bill.
Mhm.
And do we have the same breakfast menu line for the 10th?
That's up to you.
Okay. A quick flag update he gave me. We have 879 paid flags. So thank you to Lindy and Kathy and everybody that's helped promote that. We're doing a little bit of social media promotions as well. We've collected $40,064 at the moment. We still have 1,188 pending renewals. So if everybody renews, we'll have a pretty close to 2,100 flags for this year. So that's why we're building more flags. So if you can help us with that. Lazaro, where are you at? Got a quick update from Lazaro about the race over St. Patrick's Day and then another upcoming event. So give us a quick update there.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, the Irving Marathon is this Saturday, Toyota Music Factory. The race starts at 7 a.m. Right now we have about 1,700 people signed up and ready to come and run. So you guys remember, this is a Boston Marathon qualifier as well. So we have people from all over the country that are using this, being one of the first races happening since COVID, pretty much all over the world, that are going to use this race to qualify for Boston. If you're around this weekend, come by the Williams Square. Marathoners are going to go through there a total of 6 times throughout the day from 7 until around noon. So we have a lot of people coming here so that way they can come back. We also have a lot of different things coming up as well. We have another one called Fiesta de Mayo, May 22nd, which is going to be a half marathon through downtown Las Colinas. And also we're going to take them around Lake Carolyn, which showcase a little bit more of the area as well. So we're very excited. So if you guys are around this weekend, we still have some more volunteer opportunities available for some of the aid stations for whenever the runners are running to grab water. You're not going to be interacting with runners. We're just going to be refilling the tables as they run by. They grab their own water, and then we just put more. So those are available. For more information, you can go to irvingmarathon.com, and then there's different pages there where you can find information. Yes, sir. We took it a different way. So the race route starts at Toyota Music Factory, and we take him for about a loop around Williams Square. But then we take him on Las Colinas Boulevard towards La Villita and Royal Lane and on Riverside. So that road hasn't been affected by any construction. So we are using that this year. And hopefully once everything is done, we're able to have a nice course and, showcasing the entire downtown sometime in the future. But yep, that's all I have, but hopefully I'll see some of you guys this weekend. Thank you.
Lazaro, thank you for that, and excited for all those visiting runners coming and being in Irving and in our hotels and seeing our great community. Well, our program today, Rick Lindsay set up, and so Rick, I'm going to ask you to come up and introduce our speaker today. Good to see you, sir. Thanks for all your help.
Thank you, sir. Could I put on my flag hat first?
You may.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. John asked me about the flag summit last Saturday. Bob Bourgeois and I did attend that through Zoom. Started about 9:30 and finished about 12 or 12:30. A lot of good participation, and they took the format and divided us into 4 Zoom section teams, and we did that 3 times. And the last time we all met together. So my compliments to you. You are one of the largest flag programs in District 5810. Yeah, give yourselves a round of applause. That's a lot of hard work from Kathy and Bob and Bill and the group over the years. The Millennium Fountain, again, John mentioned to me just a few minutes ago, he said he wanted to take South Virginia. What did you tell me? Oh, North Carolina. They must have a basketball team or something. But anyway, so yeah, we'll be collecting and want everybody to sign up for the Millennium Fountain sponsorship. If you'll remember, we've taken that 50 flags around the fountain, and there's so much demand that now we are allowing people to duplicate up. So there'll be about 70 plus flags there. Remember, that's all pure profit. So $50, except for Texas, where Dr. Pargo, Texas, I think is bid up to maybe several hundred. But yeah, go ahead and let Bob or I, or go ahead and go online and sign up for your Millennium flag. I know I'm into some detail, but how many of you have received an email from the system asking you to renew your subscription? Have you received an email from like Irving, Las Colinas, or Flags Over Irving? This is important to know because as the president pointed out, we've got 870 plus. We will be sending out the 3rd notice. And so I'm trying to work with Bill Baxter to figure out where is there a glitch? Is it perhaps going into your spam or whatever? So if you would check that and kind of let me know, because Kathy, if we don't get that number up here shortly, we've got to come up with a different approach to get the letter out and get people signed up. So the nuggets I brought back from that conference was Bob and I've been considering now for a few years. I think we're going to go ahead and order some vinyl labels. I showed it to Bill, and I think Bill kind of gave me the head nod. Richard kind of gave me, they spent some time. So Buddy, your input and folks that have worked on it, that vinyl label will be about 1/2 to 3/4 inches. It would run down the pole. It's about 4 inches long. It would have the phone number, Flags Over Irving, the dates, and how they can renew. And so, we don't have a large theft problem, but that means people that are walking by can look at the label and go, hey, I'd like to have a flag. I can do it over my phone and bring up Flags Over Irving. So I think they're 50 cents a piece. So we'll be putting that out and make a final decision on that. Yes, sir, Mr. President. Great idea. The lady I spoke with didn't offer that. It'll be rounded. I don't know if QR will work that way, but anyway. Well, enough from me about flags. Several years ago, I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman through David Dean's organization. As you know, David does a lot of things that deal with law enforcement and human trafficking and other topics. But I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Taylor. So whenever I called him week before last, he was in Florida on a vacation, and told him what I needed, asked him if he'd come speak. He immediately said yes. And so He is married, has 3 daughters, 21, 15, 13, quite a challenge, I'd say. He is a veteran, Army veteran from war in Afghanistan era. He was appointed by President Trump to serve as U.S. Marshal for this North Texas region where he served. And he's going to give you all this detail, but he is going to speak to us today about a lot of things, political neutral. What do things look like out there from the eyes of a United States Marshal? Mr. Rick Taylor, please help me welcome Rick.
How's everybody doing this afternoon? Good. So I used to have snow white hair and a lot more wrinkles, but now that I'm retired, it's turning back to my normal color and the wrinkles were gone. I retired it's been 2 months now, January 16th to be exact, after 25 years of service in the U.S. Marshal Service, 5 years as a U.S. Air Force veteran served in the Gulf War. My career took me all over the United States. I started out in Washington, D.C., worked down in Corpus Christi, Texas for a few years, and then went out to Los Angeles and pretty much worked throughout the Western United States on supporting fugitive investigations. That was a lot of fun. And then I went to Phoenix, Arizona, and ran our state and local fugitive task force there. And then back to DC to work at headquarters, become one of those bureaucrats and policy wonks, which I've enjoyed.
I'm just going to adjust this mic slightly. If you'll lean up to it, so some of the
Okay.
hard of hearing in the back.
All right. What'd you say? No. Back to DC so I can work in headquarters for a little bit, then found an opportunity to come to Dallas because my wife is from Texas, and our firstborn, our oldest, was born in Texas. So I guess that makes me an honorary Texan, even though I grew up in Florida. But anyway, yeah, retired January and has just been enjoying it immensely. No stress. Like I told my wife, Lorena, on vacation last week, I said, literally, this is the first vacation in 25 years I've actually been able to relax and not have to worry about somebody getting shot and killed, or something happened to one of the federal judges, something happening to the courthouse, which we'll touch on a little bit here in a bit, based on the events that happened this past summer. So with that, I'll preface what I'm going to say today and talk about is that I have the utmost respect for the U.S. Capitol Police. I've worked with some of those folks over my career, very professional, top-notch individuals, and I will not critique or second guess their actions that occurred on January 6th, which we all unfortunately have come to know. Because as a leader of an organization here locally and throughout my career, I can certainly understand things, how they transpire, how you prepare for certain events like that. And that was what happened on January 6th in DC was my biggest fear here in North Texas, based on what we saw in Portland, Oregon at the federal courthouse, which, by the way, is still going on. You know, we won't get into the politics of you know, how those things happen, but in any event, we deal with it and we have to live with it until things change. But I wanted to chat about the Capitol, U.S. Capitol, because, you know, the U.S. Marshal Service, well, first of all, it touched me in several ways personally. One, I'm a veteran. I served my country, and that impacted me because of that. Two, I worked in Washington, D.C., just right a couple blocks from the U.S. Capitol, have been at the U.S. Capitol numerous times, events that happened there in 1998, the shooting that occurred, which we'll touch on a little bit, and post, you know, as recent as last year with the North Texas Crime Commission. I go out there every year as part of their legislative delegation to meet with members on Capitol Hill. So things have changed dramatically at the Capitol as far as security is concerned, if you visited there some years ago and most recently. And then being in the U.S. Marshal Service at the time, you know, and having ultimate responsibility for the protection of federal judges and the rest of the court family that work in the courthouse, but also the structure itself, right? Because the U.S. Capitol and our federal courthouses are a symbol of our democracy. It's an institution of our democracy. And just like the Capitol police officers preserve and secure the U.S. Capitol and the lawmakers and the symbology of that, we do the same thing here in North Texas and throughout the United States at our federal courthouses. We are there to preserve and protect the rule of law and our democracy at those institutions, right? And those facilities. And they are frequently threatened, as you saw in Portland, Oregon. And also our protectees are threatened. You know, they receive threats. Some are very viable. You may recall the federal judge in New Jersey whose son was killed and her husband was shot. Now, granted, that happened at the home, but that, you know, could happen as well at the federal courthouse or in the U.S. Capitol, and that's why we exist. So we have a shared mission, if you will, with the U.S. Capitol Police here locally and throughout the United States with our federal courthouses. So, you know, what happened on January 6th was nothing less than a violent insurrection, as we all know. It was an attack on our democracy, and it certainly wasn't the first time in our modern history that things have occurred there, one of which I was in DC when it happened. But, you know, just a little bit of history, 1954, a group of Puerto Rican nationalists opened fire on the House chamber. There was over 200 members of Congress. I think 5 got injured, shot, but they literally, if you've been in the House chamber, there's that gallery at the top. They were on top of there and they opened fire on the members. Now, granted, security was much different back then than it is now, but in the event it happened. In 1971, the year I was born, Weather Underground, a group called them for U.S. supported bombing of Laos. They detonated a bomb there at the Capitol. In 1983, an armed resistance unit detonated a bomb as well for retaliation for attacks on Grenada and Lebanon. Nobody was there at the time. Well, I wouldn't say nobody. It was at night. But so the damage and the injuries were non-existent other than the damages because of that. You know, obviously security has changed immensely since those as well. So 1998 was the next one. I was in DC when this occurred. Russell Weston opened fire at one of the security checkpoints there, killing 2 officers and injuring another. That event really was the catalyst for the U.S. Capitol changing its security. Now, in 1971, the architect had written a proposal on changes. But if you know anything about trying to make change in the U.S. Capitol or federal courthouse with security, it can be very challenging, as we can imagine, right? Again, these are symbols of our democracy. They are open to the public. We have to respect that and preserve that, right? We don't want, as much as I'm or was in the line of security, and I'm all for security and do what we can to maximize security, you have that delicate balance of openness, because the public can go into the federal courthouse at any day. Right now, you can go down there and walk into any courtroom as long as it's not a sealed hearing and listen to the affairs of the day, and rightfully so. Just like the U.S. Capitol, at any given day, you can go down there and visit the U.S. Capitol. It is our house. It is our institution. It is our building, right? And we want to preserve that. So we don't want it to be a fortress, armed guards, Humvees, you know, what you would think militaristic type of security, because then it doesn't have the appearance of openness, right? So those are the delicate balances that we have to juggle as we try to provide as much security as we can that's invisible, if you will, to the public while maintaining some level of security. And then in 2021 on January 6th, what occurred there? You know, media has changed significantly. The internet has changed significantly. Even from 1998, I think the internet really became mainstream in 93-ish, somewhere around in there. It has evolved 24/7 news. So, you know, as things occur in the United States, it's more in our face. Does that make sense? Back in 1983 and 1971, news didn't travel as quickly as it does today. You know, now you watch the news and they'll cover an event all day long, the same event, and they just talk about it. And then they get another person's perspective, and then another person's perspective. Oh, I believe this. I believe that. I believe this. I believe that. Okay, we've heard it. We know what happened. Can we move on to another topic, right? That's the 24/7 news event that we're in now. But this touched North Texas as well. What happened on January 6th? Mr. Larry Brock, a Grapevine resident, bothered me because he's a Air Force veteran, lieutenant colonel. He made the headline and became famous because he was the one standing in the chamber with the flak vest, helmet, and zip ties in his hand. Pretty disturbing. San Diego Air Force veteran female lost her life that day. Again, we've all seen the videos. We've all seen the pictures, right? It's in our face 24/7. More profound because we see those images of just people all over the grounds of the Capitol. People all over the outside, climbing up the stairwells and the scaffolding and the walls. I mean, just like rats, just everywhere. And then breaching that institution that is open to the public, by the way. Every one of those protesters there could have gone as a member of the public and walked into that building and visited with their congressman. But they chose to breach the security, and we know what unfolded after that. And again, you know, what happened on January 6th is what I lost sleep over this past summer because of what happened in Portland, Oregon. We were prepared as much as we can locally, because that was my fear, is what we saw then. And then fast forward, January 6th happens, and I'm like, it's exactly what I thought would happen. But you know, you can't second guess that kind of stuff because, you know, you're outnumbered, right? And as much as you want to get law enforcement involved, and I was in constant communication with DPS and our other local law enforcement partners, that if something happens like that at the federal courthouse, are you going to be able to help us? Because we can't do it, and the federal public service can't do it, who secures government buildings and has a big role in the Dallas federal courthouse in protection. We just can't do it by ourselves. And how do you prevent a mob like that? Hundreds. I mean, there was over 400 investigations going on. If you saw the 60 Minutes segment this past Sunday on that, over 400 investigations, or I'm sorry, over 400 individuals being investigated for one event, in our history of our country, unsurpassed. Pretty significant. So again, like we said, we share the security and protective mission of our institutions, just like the U.S. Capitol does at our federal courthouses. Now, security has evolved over the years, and it hasn't evolved lessening, right? It's only evolved more so. Now, back in 1998, when that shooting occurred at the Capitol, has anybody been to the Capitol before 1998? No. So visiting it was very easy. You pretty much went to one of the entrances, you went through a screening checkpoint, you know, and you were in. And who's been there after, I think it was around 2005-ish, maybe, when the visitor center was put in place. That was it, that they put that there because of that 1998 shoot. They spent a lot of money, I think almost $1 billion, putting that underground visitor center screening for public because of what happened. And it's beautiful down there. They did a phenomenal job on that. And they went through a lot of iterations of what security should look like after 9/11 and 1998 shooting. In fact, 9/11 expanded that security and changed some of the designs. And one of the ideas on the table at that time was some fencing around the Capitol. Well, you can imagine there was a certain group of individuals that didn't want that. Makes sense, right? We don't want a fortress. Now, one would argue the White House has a fence around it, and it's a nice looking fence, but it's a fence, and there's a reason for it. I can't tell you how many times when I was in DC, how many people jumped over the fence to see how far they can get to the White House before Secret Service tackled them. I don't know if it was a dare or just a game, but they were never successful, although it's happened here recently. But anyway, that was turned down. So they built that underground visitor center. So again, security has evolved, right? And to some extent, that's an invisible security. Yeah, it's underground, but a lot of it is, a lot of changes came about that to protect and secure that building without being in your face. Does that make sense? Security in federal courthouses has evolved tremendously. Security in our airports, 9/11 changed all that, right? And it's going to change more as events unfold. It's a delicate balance. Security is an inconvenience, right? We get accustomed to it. You know, when I flew down to Florida last week, you know, I had to go through screening like what my family does, because typically when I fly armed, and I don't have to go through screening. And you know, I'm holding up the line because I forgot to take my belt off and the shoes, and their TSA people are screaming at me because I didn't take everything out of my pockets. And I'm like, look, hey, bear with me here. I'm new to this, right? But, you know, I get it. I understand it, right? But to me, it's like no big deal. Okay, whatever. It is what it is. It's just a part of our life and we have to deal with it, right? But, you know, not having experienced that, you know, it was new to me, but I get it. But, you know, sitting on the other side of that, you have an obligation and a responsibility to protect that institution, make the recommendations that you can. But there's always external forces and players, stakeholders that ultimately affect what you may or may not be able to implement as far as your security apparatus. And that politics, right? Politics gets involved in that a little bit. You know, the Capitol I've seen on the news, and I'm not in the know anymore, but some of the stuff I saw just, you know, in the public domain is a proposal, and there'll be more after action reports that are done. That's common for something like this. We had an after action report when we had the Dallas federal shooting at the courthouse here about 1.5 years, almost 2 years now. I was there that day. In fact, I missed that gunman by about 60 seconds, literally. I just pulled into the garage when he got out of his car and decided to open fire on our courthouse. By the way, the officers there did a phenomenal job taking him out and preventing him from getting into the courthouse. And the system works, right? We need that, unfortunately, because had we not had those guards there, he would have made it into the building and more people would have been, well, nobody got shot except for him, but people would have lost their lives that day, undoubtedly. Backing up 2010, January 2010, there was a shooting at the Las Vegas federal courthouse. I was in DC at the time. Gunman approached the front of the courthouse. As soon as he walked in through the front doors, pulled out a shotgun and shot and killed one of our court security officers, point blank. Had no chance. You know, so again, a lot of security changes. I sat on a committee after the after action report was done on that. I sat on it, was part of a committee that had multiple stakeholders, U.S. Capitol Police, one of those, to make changes and recommendations for changes to our director and the courts to how do we secure federal courthouses better so we don't have another one of those. Now, at the end of the day, we all know if you want to get through security, you might lose your life, but you're gonna make a statement. You're gonna probably take somebody's life, but you're probably gonna lose your life too. And he did that day, the Las Vegas shooter and the Dallas shooter. But if you have a will and you have the means, you might be successful and get through, but you ultimately will lose your life. So how do you prevent that, right? Delicate balance. We don't want to put armed guards out in front of the federal courthouse with machine guns like we are a third world country. But are we going to get to that someday? I have no idea. We might. We very well may could. But some of the proposals they wrote through, more officers, right? Typical of an event like this, crisis, throw money at it, more officers. Will more officers help? Certainly it would have had that day, right? But how many people mobbed that place? Thousands of people there. Hundreds penetrated that place. Hastening the ability to request support from the National Guard and fellow law enforcement. Potentially mobile fencing. I think they just recently took the perimeter fencing down there at the Capitol. Not very attractive looking fencing, but same fencing that was just recently put back up in Portland, Oregon. We had that there. And I could tell you, I could stand here all day and talk about Portland, Oregon. That was a disaster, and it still is. But it is what it is, right? Politics. Body cameras, better communications. Communications always seems to be an issue when crisis events happen. This PD can't talk to this one, sheriff's department, feds can't talk. That's always been a problem. 9/11, it was a huge problem. Enhancing security for the lawmakers in district offices in their homes. We'll see what comes out of that. More bomb sniffing dogs. That was one of the telltale signs for me is some level of organization and not just a bunch of protesters that went to the Capitol and just got caught up in the moment, right? Because a lot of them were already saying that, including, I think, the gentleman from Grapevine. I just got caught up in the moment. Well, I find it hard to believe when you're wearing a helmet, a flak vest, and zip ties. I know what those zip ties are for. They're to restrain people, okay? And again, you can go visit the Capitol anytime you want. So if your intentions were different, why would you be wearing all that stuff, right? Because you can literally go and visit today. Bottom line is, out of that, they said the Capitol Police were understaffed, insufficiently equipped, and inadequately trained to secure Capitol and its members. Nothing I've heard differently. I've seen that statement and numerous recommendations to include our own when I did the committee for the Las Vegas shooting. We talked about needing more officers, more court security officers. We talked about and recommended better equipment for the CSOs that guard those facilities and training, right? Again, I'm not going to say that January 6th was a one-off event because it certainly could happen again. I thought I saw one proposal where one of the lawmakers suggested or is making a recommendation that there's a permanent military style reaction force housed at the Capitol. Okay, what are they going to do when there's no event? You're going to sit around in military gear and just at the ready? I just don't know. These things they're going to be all over the place. My guess is there's going to be a lot of money that gets thrown at this. Will it prevent another one? That's a good question. It's hard to defend against a mob like that if you don't have military type force. Having served in the military, you need a military type force like that. You can throw 5-6 SWAT teams at that event that day. In fact, I think there was a SWAT team housed at the Capitol in the interior that day. You're not going to overcome a mob of 1,000 or so plus people trying to get into a facility. You're just not without lives, many lives getting lost and Nobody wants that, right? You can imagine, yeah, one person shot and fired a weapon in there, but you can imagine the chaos and the havoc that would have caused, and just friendly fire, mass. I mean, you saw the videos. That was real, very profound. That guy, the officer getting squeezed in the door, he had every right to use deadly force based on our deadly force continuum. He had every right and would have been justified in pulling his weapon even if he could, and start shooting at those people. They were trying to crush him to death in that door. Seriously bodily injury or loss of life. Those are the two denominators. Serious bodily injury is pretty liberal. I mean, if you poke my eye out, that's serious bodily injury. You're trying to squeeze me in a door, that's serious bodily injury, potentially death. Probably would have been justified in pulling his weapon and doing that, or any of the other officers. But again, I'm not second guessing that because I wasn't there, and in that environment, I mean, it was mayhem there, right? But working at this line of work, it just touches you a little bit differently because of that. But one of the lawmakers said this, and I fully agree to it. Maintaining public access is a cornerstone of our democracy, whether at the U.S. Capitol or federal courthouses. Ultimately, right? Preserving that. That's our mission. Keeping everybody safe. But we can't let bad actors change our democracy, because then we've lost and we don't lose. God bless America. God bless y'all. Thank you so much for allowing me to come speak to you today. I don't know if you have a Q&A at all, or?
Anybody have a question for Rick?
Yes, sir.
Got a few hands went up.
Few
there.
hands.
Crowd was, I guess, meeting several minutes, maybe half an hour before they moved to the Capitol. What happened in terms of Capitol Police? They hadn't known that crowd was there.
So, and I don't, yeah, what type of preparations were made, communication, in anticipation of what was going on, because the crowd was there, they knew the crowd was there. So, behind the scenes, again, not privy to what exactly occurred at the Capitol and between the agencies, but I can only speak to what happens here. And other events that I've been a part of across the country, is a lot of information is shared. There's threat information. The FBI is very good about pushing information out about groups that are coming. Social media platforms are watched legally, but they're watched for that type of chatter. Let's go, we're going to meet at the Capitol, and this is me just speaking, making it up, but we're going to go meet at the Capitol on January 6th, bring everybody. Those things were said, and they saw those. So that information is out there again, but it becomes a how credible is it, right? Because I could have argued maybe to have Texas DPS at the federal courthouse at a given time, and had 200 or 300 officers standing around that federal courthouse in anticipation of what there could be based on a credible threat. But again, it's optics, right? So nobody wants to show up at the federal courthouse and you got 200, 300. So the National Guard would have had to have been called and staged ahead of time. And that is a very delicate decision that nobody wants to make, right? After the fact, it's hindsight, everybody's a genius, right? Including me. And you look back at it, oh yeah, that should have happened, or that should have happened. But again, to call and activate the National Guard ahead of time and stage them around there in anticipation of what might happen, nobody wants to make that decision. And it changes things, from our democracy, the symbology type of standpoint. Now, Had it prevented, had that been done and it prevented all that, then they would have said, great decision. If nothing would have happened, because fast forward, they were talking about the inauguration day, right? That there was going to be another type of event on January 20th, inauguration day. It didn't happen. But how many National Guard members were there? 20-something thousand. We sent officers there. Every federal agency, I think, sent agents and officers to DC in anticipation of that. We've been doing it for inaugurations for years. We've been sending deputy U.S. Marshals to DC to help with security for the inauguration. And it's in the government, and I've told some of my civilian friends that aren't familiar with security and law enforcement, is the government never goes backwards when it comes to security. So the next inauguration we have, expect the security posture to be even bigger, because they never reduce it. Super Bowl, if you knew the security that was involved in just a Super Bowl event, you would be blown away. The resources, the amount of officers, the money that is spent on security for that one chance that somebody might bring a bomb into the stadium or a gun and start shooting it up or blowing it up. It is immense. It's unbelievable. But we never go down. We always go up.
Rick's gonna be back at a future program.
Yeah. Technically, he was in our custody, U.S. Marshal Service custody, because he's on pretrial. Oh, yes. Do I believe Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide? And having knowledge of security and what happens in the Bureau of Prisons, because people do commit suicide. It is possible. I find it hard to believe, and again, yeah, I can speak to this stuff now because I'm retired. I can't, I'm not going to jeopardize anything, but I find it hard to believe that somebody was able to get in there and kill him. There's too many people involved. There's too many people in the facility. Not to say that it didn't happen, but the camera was out. I've heard the conspiracy theories that a camera wasn't working or something like that. There's not a facility out there that a camera doesn't work. It's just nature of the beast, right? The cameras are broken. You don't have the money to fix the camera, and it takes 6-7 months of the year maybe before that camera. It just doesn't so happen to be maybe the one camera that was keeping an eye on him. One of the accusations was that the guards falsified the checks. That happens all the time, everywhere. That happens in the county jails. It's human nature, right? People find shortcuts. They don't want to get up and walk around the pod, so they just, I checked it. Do a little peek. Yeah, he's in it. That happens. So I don't know. I can't say for certainty that no, but I find it, based on what I know about the system, I find it very hard to believe that somebody got in there and killed him. But I've seen the stuff you've probably seen about how there's a lot of evidence to show that potentially he didn't. And it's compelling, but I'm not a forensic person and expert in looking at crime scene photos and whether or not somebody actually did that or not, I don't know, but I find it hard to believe.
Pipe bombs that supposedly used the night before, actually pipe bombs, fake or
Based on stuff that I've heard, yes, they were real. They just weren't designed correctly, which tends to be a thing with bomb people. They don't, with the exception of some successful folks like Timothy McVeigh. They don't build it right, or they don't put something in there, and next thing you know, it doesn't go off, the pipe bomb, fortunately. But that's not uncommon. They just don't practice it. I don't know. But, fortunately for us, it didn't. But yes, from what I understand and what I've heard, those were legitimate pipe bombs and Molotov cocktails that were in somebody's possession.
Can you stay around for a couple minutes?
Sure.
If you have other questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's give Rick a great hand. What a great program. Rick, we appreciate your insight and would love to have you come back and talk to us on some other topics that you think might be interesting. So we'll make sure that Rick Lindsay stays in touch with you. We have one other point of order before everybody slips out, and we'll conclude our meeting. Buddy's going to lead us in the four-way test, but Rick Lindsay, if you'll come to the podium, we have a point of order that he's going to present to the club.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I hope all of you received the same email I did from Rotary Foundation. Last Monday, March 22nd, was World Water Day. And as you know, we always drill a well in Mexico. It cost us about $1,500. Seen the pictures. The gentleman, Wayne, comes and talks to us. I think we have plans to continue that. I would like to make a motion, or ask you, but I'd like to make a motion that this club donate $1,000 from our general fund to go to this foundation, because fresh, clean water is what helps other people fight this pandemic that is worldwide. So I would like to make that motion, Mr. President.
Second by Bill Lamar.
Do you want to call the vote, or shall I? Okay, I will, we have a motion. It's been seconded. All in favor who are here, please raise your hand. Somebody give me a count. If John, check the screen, the folks who are on the screen right here, opposed, give me a count, how many yes here? Because if there's more yeses here than there are people on the screen, I think we can say it carries. Raise your hand again, please. Yeses. Sir, okay, Mr. President, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for supporting that.
We will get a check to support that project, and thank you, Rick, for helping us with that. Well, it's good to see more people in the room, so we're glad you joined us for a great program today. Next week, we're going to have a flag update. I also need to announce that next Thursday is April 1st, so this is not April Fool's joke. We have a board meeting, so we do it every other month. So those of you that serve on the board, if you'll meet me here about 10:30 that morning, and then our program will be about the flag program. So if you'll stand with me, Buddy Brown's going to lead us in the four-way test, and we will be adjourned. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you, Buddy. Thank you all for being here today. Make sure you greet our guest and visiting Rotarian. If you have other questions for Rick, come see him up front. Thank you for being here at Rotary today.